Yeah, sipping on my I'm not seeing any. I see how I can allow them to talk. So I think we're ready.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry that we can't have you all on the screen. As we mentioned during last meeting, it's just for security issues and kind of what the city has decided is the safest way for us to go about having these meetings with each other. But we do want to hear from you. So if at any point during the meeting you'd like to speak, all you'll have to do is raise your hand. You'll see the hand raise function at the bottom of your screen. If for whatever reason you can't find that, just shoot either Cito or me an email and we can get that figured out for you. So we're going to have public comment or speak out. And when you speak, please just introduce yourself, say your name, what ward you're in. And we anticipate hearing from a lot of people tonight, which is great. So we're going to limit everyone to 2 minutes. You'll see Linda. She will hold up a warning screen just telling you for time. So thank you. And I think we can get started now with the speak out section.
So I don't see any hands raised.
I do. I see that Erhard has his hand raised, so I'm going to let them speak.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to do this on my phone, which is not always the best. Thanks for recognizing me. Yeah, Erhard Manco, live at 60 Grove Street, and I'm going to just apologize in advance because I have a conflict tonight and I'm not able to attend the NPA, but I just wanted to remind all my neighbors that I'm running for Chittenden County Senate. And I'm hoping that if folks have questions for me or any issues you'd like to discuss, my cell phone number is 233-2902. Again, that's 233-2902. I've got a website with some information and it's erhard4senate.com, ERHARD for senate.com. And yeah, just, I've been an NPA member since the NPA started in the early 80s, used to be a city councilor for folks who don't know me, and have been a long time affordable housing advocate. I don't know if the NPA is going to do anything in terms of a forum for any of the candidates. I know wards 2 and 3 are doing forums tomorrow night. The primary is coming up pretty soon, so probably can't be in front of ahead of the primary, but just wanted to let folks know I love the support of my neighbors, and please do call. I'm running for a number of issues, economic justice issues, for more affordable housing, climate change, and also racial and social justice issues. So been a longtime advocate at the State House and have a lot of experience on how the legislative process works. So I think I could use that experience helping represent Chittenden County in the Senate.
Great.
So thanks for letting me speak, and sorry I can't be there for the rest of the meeting.
Great, thank you. Now I'm gonna put Tom on to speak.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. My name's Tom Darenthal. I live on Nash Place, and I really have a question for our city councilors. And during the city council update, are you guys going to talk about the city budget? And our school board representatives going to talk about the school budget and whether we have a full year budget or we have a first quarter budget, and what type of differences we're expecting to see versus say last year, because I know there's been cuts. I'm not sure what's been cut or what I would notice has been cut. So I'm hoping that during the city council update and the school board update that those things will come out. Thanks.
Okay, as a reminder for everyone that just joined, if you'd like to participate and speak out, please just raise your hand and we'll be able to put you in speaking order. You'll have 2 minutes to tell us what you want. So yes, thank you. I'm also going to promote the mayor as a panelist because I see he just joined. So.
Jonathan, do you want to share the list of attendees?
I could do that. Just hang on. Thank you for the reminder. This is page 1.
In the meantime, could we keep on going with conversation and speak out?
If anyone
Right now, we have no other hands up.
yeah, would like to speak, just raise your hand. Maddie, I see you have your hand up, so I'm going to allow you to speak.
Okay, so my name is Maddie Posig. I live on Hungerford Terrace. I've lived here for a long time. Summers are usually pretty quiet, but this summer has been anything but. I think because of the pandemic, there's been an incredible increase in house parties and noise because the bars have a lot of restrictions. I'm also really concerned in general just about off-campus student behavior in terms of the virus. When I walk around my neighborhood, almost no one is wearing a mask. There's large groups of students walking around. I know the governor has chosen not to mandate masks, but I've observed that a lot of states across the country where governors are not mandating masks or having certain restrictions, cities are taking the initiative and leadership, and I'm looking to our mayor and our city councilors to maybe enact something stronger due to the density in Burlington and our different population and the amount of bars and restaurants that we have. I think our area is really different than the rest of Vermont in terms of the virus. And I think what might work in rural Vermont is not necessarily what's going to work in Burlington. I'm very concerned about when the students return. A lot of the off-campus students come back in August. I did see that the universities put out a plan yesterday, but I know that those things might be very easy to control on campus. So if you're living in a dorm or going to classes, the monitoring and the testing, et cetera. But what about students living off campus? I have a question. If a student is off campus, can they opt to be online only? And then again, who's going to monitor their behavior? They're supposedly not supposed to have parties, but they're certainly doing that this summer. I watched something on the news last night in terms of masks that said if 95% of Americans wore masks, by this November, there would be 45,000 less deaths. I think that's a really significant statistic. As I say, I read the UVM guidelines, but I'm just wondering who's going to be monitoring the kids that are living all around me, because so far this summer, they're not wearing masks and they're not social distancing. So I'm hoping that the mayor and city council act quickly, because a lot of these off-campus students move back early August. They come from out of state. It's not a far time away. I'm a senior, and I'm just really concerned about being part of that vulnerable population. Thanks.
Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you. Karen, are you gonna promote the next person?
I don't see any other hands.
I see William Church. You can now speak, I believe.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
So thanks for letting me speak. I'd like to just second what Maddie was saying. I think we've forgotten the fact that we had a very high death rate in nursing homes when the first outbreak of this happened. And in fact, we at one time were rated amongst the top 10 cities in the world for deaths per capita because of what happened in the nursing homes. It's the vulnerable populations in this city that are at risk, and the disconnect between how the students behave, the enforcement by the university of behavior off campus, and some of us at risk of this is something we have to discuss and have a plan for. I think that the bars being closed have spilled into the neighborhoods. This generation, and it's been in the papers, I'm not saying anything new, has a feeling of invincibility. There are, however, groups in this country that are very susceptible to COVID and will have increased death rates if we don't do what we know how to do, which is enforce social distancing, stop some of these parties, wash our hands, and wear masks. And those are difficult things to do. And yet, by not clearly saying to people that this is the requirement to be in Burlington right now, that we're going to get more deaths. And that's something I think we should all keep in mind as we move forward here, is that not everybody can go to these parties, be asymptomatic, and then get up and go to another party tomorrow night. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I don't see hands, Hannah. I don't know my screen.
So do you
have
have
to keep
the
doing it.
panelists do you see the panelists that are on the participant list? Like, do you
I
see?
do. I see the names. I just right now see no more hands. Are there?
Yeah, so if anyone would like to speak during Speak Out, please just indicate by raising your hand so that way we can put you off of mute. So yeah, if anyone wants to do that.
It looks like Moreau is waving his hand in front of the camera. I'm not sure if that's what he needs to do or not, but
Okay, I'm gonna unmute you.
Thanks, Hannah. I was not trying to get your attention. I've got like a setup here where I've got a phone precariously balanced on a doorstop and a bike helmet. So I was just trying to keep it from falling over, which I may have to keep doing. But I'm happy to speak now. I've appreciated the comments so far. If there are more people that want to weigh in before I'm eager to speak to the group on these issues and give kind of an update and a projection on where we're headed. But I'm here. I wasn't sure how you want to do it. If you want to have other people speak first, I'm happy to wait.
I don't see anyone else with their hand raised right now. So wait, I see Jonathan's screen is waving, so I will unmute him. But now no one else has their hand raised.
Okay, Angie does.
That's you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Angie Chappell-Sokol, and I am one of those vulnerable people who walk around and see primarily younger people without masks. And it's a big frustration for many of us. And I think that altogether, a frustration is a kind of benign disregard on the part of younger people who live in these neighborhoods. And I was a young person once and went to college and raised, my part of hell. But I don't think I would do that in a pandemic. I mean, I like to think that I would be more respectful then. But I don't really want to talk about the students so much as that I want to talk about the really challenging relationship that I observe between the city and the university. And that I would like to see a great deal more communication between the city and the university, in particular about the students who live in these neighborhoods where we are vulnerable to fireworks, COVID, a bunch of noise, living with people who are not respecting the neighborhood. I would like the university to try to stand up big and tall and influence kids about the kind of civic responsibility that they have. I would like the city to stand up tall and insist that the university participate more in creating a civic relationship between people who live in these neighborhoods and the university. I worked at the university for a long time. I appreciate what they add to this community. I want them to help educate their students in a rounder fashion to be respectful citizens in addition to scientists and writers. I think that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Okay, and I see Representative Rachelson has her hand raised, so you should be set to talk.
Hello, thanks so much. I will be brief. I am here because I have heard from many people in Chittenden 6-6 about these issues and have been doing some research on what the best practices are, and am concerned about the colleges. I've had conversations with UVM, not Champlain yet, really not being able to follow what best practices are, both for on campus and for students off campus. And I'm here to hear what people are saying and to share my concerns as well, and my intention to work with folks to continue the dialogue with our statewide stakeholders, and know the mayor is, I've not had a chance to talk to the mayor yet personally, but just I'm hoping we can all work together to make sure that we're going to keep people safe and healthy.
Okay, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised. As a reminder, if you'd like to speak during Speak Out, just indicate with a raised hand. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be able to put you in speaking order. You'll have 2 minutes to talk, and Linda will be giving the warnings on when your time is up. If no one else would like to speak, I feel like this would be a good time for the mayor maybe to address some of these. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Hannah. Great to be with you all. Good to, I don't think I've been with this NPA since, Hannah, you took a leadership role. Great to see you in this role, and good to see everybody else. Thanks for the opportunity to come and talk about these issues with you tonight, and to hear what you're seeing and experiencing. Let me start by expressing my complete agreement with the level of concern that I've heard expressed in the time I've been with you tonight about the pandemic in general, about the need for state and local action to fight the virus, suppress the virus, and agreement about concern about the behaviors and activities that you've described, the parties, in particular, these substantial gatherings of students, primarily students and other young adults, let's say. I share this concern, and I live in a neighborhood quite similar to, I think, the neighborhoods that you're describing. We're surrounded on all sides by student rentals. So I see it. I hear what you're describing, and I think you're right to be concerned. So let me start there. I would, and maybe we'll come back to that, and I can, while talking about concerns, for what it's worth, I will share and, take feedback on what we're most concerned about within the city. We, at this point in the pandemic, think the science is pretty clear about where there's a high risk of transmission, where there's a high risk of super spreading events, and where there are lower risks. And you may have heard us, I hope you've heard us start to use this messaging in the last couple of weeks. Hopefully you'll see more of it in the weeks ahead. We are very focused on what we are referring to now as the 3 C's. So these are closed spaces, indoor spaces, close contact settings. So this is where people are sitting within a few feet of each other for an extended period of time, having conversations, and crowds. Where there's a really high risk of super spreading events is where you have an overlap of all 3 of those issues. And this kind of focus on the 3 C's is something that we, it's messaging we've taken straight from Japan, which has been one of the more successful countries in the response. And again, hopefully you'll see messaging around this in lots of different formats in the days ahead. So, what do we take from that, and how do we apply that to this conversation? Certainly, I think we're right to be concerned about bars, and I think there's been a fair amount of public discussion about that the last couple of weeks. There's a high possibility of overlap of all 3 of those all 3 of those conditions in bars, particularly when it's indoor seating in bars. Certainly, you can have, and there has been, and there have definitely been cases in this period of comparable overlap of those 3 risk factors in residential settings, in these larger home group houses, and these in what we think of as student housing homes. And I have a high level of concern about that, particularly when the activities are inside. When they're outside, of course, there are other impacts, but there is considerably, the risk of major spreading events is less with the outdoor activities. The science increasingly seems to indicate, including recent studies that just have gotten a bunch of attention this week. So basically share that concern from the beginning. I hope people have seen in the city's actions. We have had since the end of February a belief that local actions really matter in this pandemic. We came to that conclusion right out of the box after just doing initial kind of study of 1918-19 pandemic, and it's become sort of a commonplace case study now. Our research team, this team we put together, is called the analytics team, to keep us abreast of best practices, kind of surfaced very early on the case study from 1918-19, where Philadelphia and St. Louis both saw their first infections and that great influenza on the same day. Philadelphia took a very laissez-faire attitude to the virus, continued to have parades and other events. St. Louis took a very aggressive response, and the death rate at the end, for the peak of the pandemic, at least, the death rate was twice as high in Philadelphia as it was in St. Louis. We took that lesson that the local actions really matter, and we have tried to take robust action from the beginning. I do believe city action is part of the reason that Vermont's record has been as strong as it has to date. Vermont, my sense is people on this call are following events closely, and you're aware of all this, but Vermont really has been an outlier from the start. And I think the city's actions have been part of that. One website I recommend to people, if you don't follow it, I find it a very actionable, useful website, is the COVID Act Now website. If you go to that today, you see that Vermont is one of the 4 states in the country right now that is green, meaning the trends are all headed in the right direction right now. That is fragile. That is not stating that is in no way a declaration of kind of mission accomplished. I do think our collective actions, which includes city action, but more so than anything includes the actions of Burlingtonians and Chittenden County residents and Vermonters. I think the compliance with the governor's orders of Vermonters has been really exemplary, and that's what has kept the virus in check up until now. And that has bought us some additional time. We are trying to use that time wisely. And so I want to kind of move from sharing the concern to talking about the plan going forward and the work that's happening, and frankly, what the help we need with the plan going forward, which is this. People may be aware that there was, in the lead up to June 1 and students returning on June 1, it came together late, but there was a coordinated plan that was put in place for the June 1 turnover, when we expected and did see a significant number of individuals return from out of state. There was some coordinated action between the city, the state, UVM, and Champlain College. And while we can talk about the success or shortcomings of that, it was a good dry run for what we expect to be a much larger challenge this fall, when not only will there be far larger numbers of students returning, we expect, there will also be classes starting to take place, and the risk of transmission in other settings outside of the homes. We are going to continue. Sorry for the camera issues here. We're having our first coordination meeting of those 4 parties on that this week. We're having it tomorrow. This is a meeting that has been in the making for some time. UVM and Champlain College have both clearly been doing significant levels of planning for the fall already.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to say just 30 more seconds to ensure that we have enough time for people to ask questions.
Okay, great. Sorry. Thanks, Hannah. So basically, joint planning meeting starting tomorrow. And I will say this is another area where I agree with the sentiment we've heard from multiple states so far. We are definitely in these joint planning efforts looking for UVM to take responsibility, not just for safety and virus suppression on the campus. We're looking for them to take a significant role and use every lever that they have, all the tools within disposal to help the city and the state control the virus in off-campus neighborhoods as well. I think that is a perennial, chronic kind of tug of war or challenge between UVM and the city. We've had a relatively good period of collaboration, I feel, in recent years, and we've seen a lot of these quality of life indicators in the metrics going in the right direction. That has all turned around in the pandemic, and what has been described, things are definitely worse this year. I think directly as a result of the pandemic. We need UVM's help in an unprecedented way this fall. I'm going to be pushing hard for that. I would welcome the NPA and you as individuals to use your communication channels to make it clear that you're expecting that out of the university as well. I'll pause there and have more to say, but try to take some more questions.
Yeah, I think we probably want to go on to our city councilors.
I do see that Representative Rachelson has raised their hand again, if we're okay with letting them speak.
Okay.
I'll be quick. I just sent a bunch of you, including you, Linda and Hannah, a copy of the Johns Hopkins document, which is called Open Smart EDU. It's a really great resource. So I just sent the document link and hoping you can share it with the NPA, which is both a planning guide and a self-assessment for higher ed. And I just want to call your attention to, when you get to look at it, page 71 discusses off-campus housing. And in general, this document is not thinking so much of, or isn't addressing universities that sort of blur lines with cities, but it does call into recommendation that the university can close or work with the city to close housing off campus, such as fraternities, large apartments that may be spreaders of COVID. And I just think that's really important. It's in here as one of the best practices. And I'm happy to send along a follow-up memo on some of my concerns of where I'm seeing the university not able to do what is recommended even on campus. So again, I'm a strong supporter of the university. I want students to get a good education, but we need to keep our community safe. And again, I'm going to end here, but I will encourage you to look at these documents, and I'm happy to send some other ones.
So I just see Maddie, and since she lives in the thick of it, excuse me, I think we should let her speak again, if everyone's okay with that. So we'll allow her to talk.
Yeah, Moreau, thank you for everything you're doing and everything that you said. It was great. And, unfortunately, the burden falls on you where it really should be falling on the university. And it's been like that forever, but this is like higher stakes. Like Bill was saying, people are dying. We don't die when we're bothered by noise. We're just, don't get a good night's sleep. So when you meet with them, I have a couple of questions I would love for you to ask them. Because so many young people are asymptomatic, and I read the paper that the university put out and the things for the students, and I understand they're going to screen them when they initially come back, but because so many younger people don't even know if they have it, and then they're spreading it, if students particularly are off campus and not in dorms, how is the university planning to, one, screen students after this big initial screening when they all return? And how are they going to monitor behavior, that they're not having parties, that they're social distancing, that they're wearing masks? Like, that's all well and good when they're in their confines of their dorm under their purview. But here they're spread out all over the city. And I just don't understand how they're going to be able to do it successfully. So those are my concerns, how they're going to screen and how they're going to monitor this behavior plan that the students are supposed to sign. Thanks.
Okay, I don't see any more hands.
Yeah, I don't see any more hands, so I think it would be best to go on to the city council updates. So, Jack, do you want to start, or Jake or Zariah, whomever would like to go?
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to start. We also do, this is more to the steering committee, how you want to do it, but we do have Gail Champenoy and Joe Spidell on the call if we want to hear directly from UVM representatives who are working on these issues. And I did have a good phone call today with Gail where she took me through some of the actions that they are currently taking and are planning. So I don't know, do you want to do that at some point tonight, or do you want to just keep moving?
I think we were going to have them next month. We had originally asked them to come and we were going to schedule time, but they declined. So I think so we don't end at 10 o'clock. We should keep going.
Okay.
But Hannah, Carol, anybody else?
Yeah, they didn't decline. We just got a response later than we had anticipated with the agenda. They are on the agenda for next month, so I think we should just keep it to that. And if anyone has any questions for them, I can send out their email addresses to ensure that we can kind of open up that line of communication. But yeah, I think for right now, the counselors should begin to give their updates.
Okay, I see the mayor too, trying to get in.
No, he's messing with his phone.
No, I was hoping, could I just, if I could just really quickly just close on with one point I haven't made yet, and I appreciate, again, this chance to be with you. I do just want to close with a note of some optimism and hope here, in that, first of all, I do just want to, when we're talking about these challenging real issues, it gets easy to sort of paint all students with a broad brush. And I really just want to share with this group how the city has had firsthand experience with hundreds of students who are taking their responsibilities seriously. We had more than 200, almost entirely students sign up for the supported quarantine program since the city started at the beginning of June. Students, people who take these supportive quarantine services take a very serious pledge. And we just got back the kind of first survey results, and this is self-reporting, so take it with some grain of salt, but we believe there was a very high level of compliance among people who signed up for these quarantine services. And we learned something in this experience about how to support people in quarantine. This is something we're going to continue. And I do just want to make it clear that many students took those responsibilities seriously and worked hard to comply with the strict orders of quarantine, which were stricter than the stay-home orders we all lived with. The other kind of note of quarantine, note of optimism I just want to finish with is I just want to remind us that, we're 3.5 months into this, and together as a community, we have gotten through every challenge and succeeded with these strategies work. The combined strategies of testing, I appreciate that Maddie raised these: testing, contact tracing, isolation, and quarantine. These also are best practices that Johns Hopkins and others have been pushing out. We've had a month and a half now of battling the virus since we've reopened, really almost 2 months since we've reopened, and we can make this work. It's going to take all of us as individuals working hard. It's going to take all the institutions working hard. But I really don't want to close a night like tonight all without some validation that we can get through this together, and we're going to do it. So thank you. Thanks for the chance to be with you. I'll thank you, Jack, for allowing me to jump in one more time. We'll see you all soon.
Sure. And Mr. Mayor, I mean, the first thing I didn't realize you were going to be here. The first thing I was going to summarize for the group, and we heard someone in public comment bring it up, was the budget. If you want to speak to it first, I'm fine with that. I mean, obviously you and I had some disagreements about it, but I think, it's primarily the mayor's budget and you had more direct. So I'm happy for you to be the one to describe it since you're here, unless you don't want to.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate that too. Let me, I'll try to be concise. This was my 9th budget. And it was unlike any other budgeting experience for the last 9 years. It's always a lot of work. It's always a major milestone of the year. This was extraordinarily challenging this year. We basically rewrote the entire 3,000 line general fund budget from mid-March on, changing, a huge number of lines to deal with the fact that we expect. At one point, we thought we'd have a $10 million revenue shortfall, about a 15% revenue shortfall. Overall, we've downgraded that. We now think maybe it will only be an $8 million shortfall. That's what we budgeted to. That caused us to do things I never imagined we'd have to do. Usually, municipal budget is very stable from one year to the next. We saw huge swaths of our income just wiped out with the closing of the bars and the hotels and restaurants and marina and events on the waterfront. City's taken a huge hit. I'm proud, frankly, that we were able to present to the council and get a strong council approval of budget that, under those circumstances, does not raise taxes. We are not implementing the taxes that the city voted for back in March before the pandemic hit, because I don't think this is a a time that a lot of people can afford essentially a 5% tax increase. We are not laying off people or furloughing employees. We are we are essentially able to maintain all city services. You will experience some diminution of services for sure, both for COVID health reasons as well as resource reasons because of the cutbacks. But we essentially are attempting to maintain all city services. We are still moving forward with major infrastructure investments, both because that is a kind of a core goal, and because we are trying not to deepen the recession by cutting back everywhere. This is not an austerity budget. We are continuing to put money into the economy as a local government, and we're going to continue to be able to make real progress on some of our biggest challenges. We have new funding, a lot of new funding in this budget for racial justice. We have significant resources in this budget to continue to make progress on the climate emergency. And we'll be giving, for anyone interested in that, I'm excited about the presentation that we'll be giving to the council on Monday, which is the most substantial kind of new metric update since the Net Zero Energy City Plan was adopted last year. We're continuing to make progress on that plan, and we're resourced to continue that in the year ahead. And we are robustly resourced to respond to the pandemic. We are able to have these supportive quarantine programs and be running a whole variety of food security programs and be transforming our public streets to allow retailers and restaurants to operate safely outdoors. We're able to do all this and do all this quickly because the council and the administration worked to put significant resources, even from the early days of this pandemic, into an emergency fund that allows us to move quickly and create masks and buy thermometers early on. So I'm proud of the budget. I think it does a lot of good. And I guess the last thing to know about the budget is we hope that all that work we did to bring forward a responsible way through this, even with an $8 million projected shortfall, we're hoping that all that work gets undone quickly by Congress coming forward with some relief for local communities. That would change what will be a challenging budget year ahead into a much more normal circumstance. The reason we are able, last point on this, and the reason we are able to bring forward a budget that does all of that, frankly, is entirely because of the work we've all done together. And I really do think it's been a community effort involving numerous public votes, as well as years of commitment to righting the financial ship, getting out of the deficit we were in back in 2012, building up substantial rainy day funds. We are tapping those funds extensively to get through this, but we will still have more funds in reserve for what we expect will also be a challenging 2022. So that's basically the story. And if you want to, there's a lot more online and on our Facebook page if people are interested in a deeper dive.
Okay, great. Thanks for doing that. I think that was helpful for people to hear that directly from you since you're on the call. Something else that we did recently that I think this year in particular, we got a little bit overshadowed by everything else going on, is we did our annual appointments for boards and commissions. So congrats to anyone on this call. I don't want to miss anyone, so I'm not going to start naming people, but congrats to anyone on this call who was appointed or reappointed to any of our boards and commissions, and just always consider, anyone who's interested in applying. The applications are usually in kind of the May timeframe, but there's also openings that happen throughout the year as well. So that was one thing. I think Councillor Hightower is going to speak on the racial justice resolution. That was an enormous undertaking and effort that passed recently. Something else that I hadn't worked on and initiated back in December that is now moving again is ranked choice voting, also known as instant runoff voting, which was in place in Burlington from 2005 to 2010. And that just passed the charter change committee, which Councillor Stromberg's on, and that will come back to the full council. If the council approves that, that question of whether to reintroduce ranked choice voting would be placed on the November ballot. So that'll be on Monday's council meeting that we'll be taking that up. Something else that a resolution that I had was the lead sponsor on that passed in May around getting buildings in Burlington off of fossil fuels. There was just a public hearing last night and the mayor was there and Burlington Electric Department and others were there to take public input on that. And then we heard from a lot of members of the public calling for a ban on fossil fuel hookups for new construction, new buildings, and some discussion around regulating existing buildings or renovations and retrofits of buildings to try to decarbonize and try to especially electrify buildings so that appliances and heating systems are powered by Burlington Electric Department, 100% renewable electricity rather than natural gas or other forms of heating. So that would be really a huge step towards getting Burlington off of fossil fuels, is to tackle buildings, which is the second biggest source of emissions. So those are two initiatives that just happened yesterday and today. And I'll let the other councillors speak on some other items. I was going to spend some time on the budget, but I think we got a good summary from the mayor around that. So I'll just kind of leave it at that.
I'm happy to go next. The big item that I'm going to speak to is the racial justice resolution.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Councillor Hightower, just before you jump in, someone did ask, the person who asked about the budget, I'm apologizing, I forget who it was, but whoever did that, they did ask if it was a partial year budget or a full year budget. For the city, it is a full year budget. I think the legislature had passed a partial year budget and they're going to come back, but ours is a full year budget. It is something that we can make amendments to depending. If revenues are much different than we expect, we could amend it, but it is a full year budget.
Great, thanks.
So back to the racial justice resolution, which was my first resolution as primary sponsor, which was a learning experience for me. I think there was a lot of talk regarding the resolution around the reduction of police force, and that is one thing that it did, but I think it also did a lot more than that. I'm sure people on the call are familiar about it, but it was things like declaring racism a citywide health crisis, reallocating funding to other needed services, calling into question, this one was pretty important to me, calling into question the need for SROs, asking the school system to take the next year to work with BPD and other groups to try to figure out some alternatives to school resource officers. It started to provide some definition for an assessment that the mayor had already set aside funds for in his budget around what an assessment would look like, who would be involved, things like that. Created some more mandates on training for all city staff, not just our police officers, around systemic oppression, both race-related and not race-related. And then it created an apology and reparations task force. Oh, and it gave the police commission some additional authority around. So it did a whole lot of things. One of them is the reduction of police officers through attrition. Hopefully that'll happen a little bit slowly. One of the things that I'm hoping to work on fairly quickly is making sure that we have something in place, I think especially around call volumes, and start to talk about what alternatives are fairly quickly, especially because we're not sure how quickly we'll be losing police officers. So making sure that we've got something in place so that residents are seeing a change to their service. So happy to answer any questions around that. A few other things that are coming up, just so folks know, not that, standing council committees are the most exciting things, but the next Public Safety Commission meeting is August 4th. We'll be looking at some of that, what I was just talking about, the dispatch volume and procedures around how they're taken care of, to dig into what the alternatives will be, some questions around the budget, and then finally police, body cameras. And then CDNR is meeting on July. I'm actually not 100% sure yet, but we're meeting next week. I'm sorry, I don't know the day yet. And one of the big things that we'll be talking about is just cause eviction. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to join. I'm sure there will be a few other things there as well. And then other things that the council is taking up. I don't know if Jack said this, but the Just Economy Charter Change Resolution, which a few of you all have emailed me about, there will also be a presentation on changes to our parking ordinances, which I encourage anyone to listen to. And then there's a small ordinance specifically around allowing bowling, which I looked at when I was still on the DRB, or helped move forward. So I think there is a hope to have a bowling alley in the South End. So that is what is upcoming.
Okay.
Can everybody hear me? I have a fan going. Thanks. Well, I sincerely hope that every single one of us is doing all right. I know that this past couple of months have been just kind of a whirlwind in every single category of life. And I just appreciate so much of the work that my colleagues have been doing on council. I appreciate, Moreau's leadership, especially throughout COVID. I think that this was entirely unprecedented, and it's been hard. I have essential workers within my immediate family, and I just hear every night like stories of just the horrendous things that they have to go through during the day just to stay moderately safe, whatever safe means anymore. But yeah, so in terms of a more so sequential update of things that we didn't quite hit on yet, is that we do have approved common area fees for Church Street Marketplace. So that's just a quick update on that front. And on July 1st, last week, we, on Wednesday, I believe it was a Wednesday, composting, or just rather the vast reduction of organic materials going into landfills has become mandatory. So a lot of people are now trying to compost, if you hadn't been doing that already. I personally have been getting a lot of emails and even some Instagram messages and things like that about this, because there are folks that come from states that like don't compost, that barely recycle sometimes. A lot of out-of-state students are like, okay, how do I do this? I'm willing to do it, but how do I do it? So I'm going to actually be posting some information far and wide on my media sites, and post more in the NPAs on that. I'm not NPAs, the Front Porch Forum. In general, I'll be posting more on Front Porch Forum. I just have been getting acclimated. So that's an update that we all should be kind of well aware of, because it is a mandate, so to speak. I do want to shift a little bit into kind of UVM updates. The students now have a decision to make on, I believe it's now the 17th of July is the deadline to make a decision whether they want to have online classes or in-person on-campus classes. And some of those on-campus classes, I think they're going to do like a pseudo, some of them will be online, but they do have to make a big decision as to how they want to be educated, or, just to conduct their education in the fall. And so that's a lot to talk about and plan for. I think students really need resources and help in understanding what that could look like, especially incoming students who've never been to college before. There's just so many different aspects. I was thinking about this late last night too, like just on end. And I think that there's a lot of conversations that should take place. I think it's great to have a choice in a way, but we really, really need to take precautions at all levels. So I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind. A little bit else on the UVM side, I had direct emails written to me. I've had just text messages. I've had phone calls regarding, the human health situations at UVM in terms of emergency housing residents. I know also a paper came out recently saying that I think there wasn't any email response for 36 days. Maybe UVM could speak a little bit to that, but I'm not going to put you on the spot this minute. But that is something that like really resonates with me. I think that just having that accountability and understanding of, these are young adults. These are human beings that are also not in an optimal living situation right now. So I think that that's something that's really important to take into account. Another quick thing on kind of UVM related things is that that UVM canceled the extra Burlington police patrols of UVM student neighborhoods. And there was a lot of discussion around this. I realized that these patrols were being proposed due to the COVID-19 awareness and noise complaints. And I understand that these kind of being pulled is like, oh no, but that is a problem. Noise is a problem. There's a lot. I've seen it myself. I've walked up to students and just young adults in the area to talk about this, with trying to not risk my own safety. That's something that really shouldn't be on me. It shouldn't be on Moreau. It should really be, talked about in a kind of larger scale at the UVM. So, so those were canceled, and hopefully, and I hope it wasn't solidified as to why, but I think it might have something to do with the fact that it was being proposed at the same time that the George Floyd protests were at critical mass, and a lot of people were feeling incredibly anxious, and I don't blame them. That is so warranted. So I think that there's a larger discussion that has to do with how we're going to enforce safety and regulations for students in a safe way that makes people feel safe, that does not involve police. I think that that's honestly it, unless people want to hear about sidewalks or want to know when the next TUC meeting is, which will be on the 28th, and charter change will be on the 29th, following in Zarai's footsteps on that. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think it would probably be best just for everyone to direct their questions to the counselors via email that we can send out, just to make sure we're moving along. Is everyone okay with that? Are the counselors okay with that? Okay. We don't have any hands raised anyway. So I think we should move on to
Carol does. Carol's hand is raised.
Okay, yeah, you can go.
I'm sorry, Hannah. Just point of information. Tom Flanagan would like to be moved to a panelist position when you have a chance. Okay. Thank you.
So now it's time for the school board to go. So if either of you wants to start, either of the members.
Hi.
Kathy, your camera's off.
I'll put the video on, and I hope you can understand me, but my internet is not very good right now. I don't know why, but everything keeps stopping and starting, so I hope you can understand me when I talk. Do you?
Yeah, so far.
Do you hear me? Pardon?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the resolution that was put forth with the city council then on the MOU with the police force and the officers in the school. And the resolution will maintain the current MOU in its current funding with the city, of which district budget budget is dependent on for 2021 school year. And as part of that, also the school board has requested that the superintendent create a force that examines the roles of the school resource officers and develops recommendations to further the district's policy goals in implementing all elements of the restorative practices as part of the district's priority for equity and inclusive schools. The task force will identify and document the original intention of the school resource office presence in the schools and the functions SROs perform in the schools. It'll determine whether whether any of these functions must be performed by uniformed law enforcement officials, include options for alternative approaches which reinforce a restorative model for all of Burlington students, youth during and outside of school hours, and ensure the safety of all of Burlington students during and outside of school hours using restorative practice model that eliminates the traumatizing effects, associated with weapons, uniforms, and police presence communicated by some of the district students and community members. They're also recommended that to Mayor Weinberger and City Council to fund the 2 existing SRO positions for the upcoming 2021 school year. Request that the Burlington Police Department collaborate with BSD staff and the school board to make adjustments to the SRO operating guidelines for the 2021 school year in order to decrease the negative perceptions of having police officers present on the school grounds, and reflects the board's desire to have SROs in plain clothes and unarmed in the fall of 2020, but acknowledges as of now that BPD indicated through plain clothes though plain clothes is possible, being unarmed is not, and in the board mandating them to unarm, they likely would have prompted the BPD, from being part of to vacate the MOU. So that's the meat of it. If anyone has any questions, I'll try to answer any of those. And no,
I don't see any.
Okay.
Just wanted to,
Aiden?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to back on what Kathy was saying about the resolution. I wanted to thank those folks that came out and spoke at the 2 meetings, the D&I committee, as well as the larger school board committee. And I especially wanted to thank the students that came out and spoke. I think that was a really great voice to have for the decision making. And Kathy covered the gist of it, so I don't really have any updates on my end, but I just wanted to also welcome our new superintendent, Tom Flanagan, as well. So, yeah.
Great.
Okay, I don't see anyone with their hand raised, so I think we should just go on to the new superintendent. So if you'd like to begin.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Commissioner Haji, for the welcome. I appreciate it. And echo your thanks to the students, particularly who came out to talk. I think you're really pushing us to think about student voice, and we have to take that seriously. So thank you for your push, your leadership there. And I just want to thank you all for having me tonight. I'm here to speak a little bit about, just to sort of introduce myself really, and to give you a little background on myself. And then I thought I could talk a little bit about the 100-day entry plan. And then I can open it up for questions and conversation. Does that seem okay to everybody?
Sounds great.
I did have a really fancy PowerPoint, but I don't think we need to look at it right now. So I'm so I just got here on just before July 1st. It was an interesting adventure. Quarantining in Rhode Island, getting a negative test, getting up here immediately while I'm selling and buying a house. So we've had quite the experience as a family in the past couple of months. I have 3 daughters who are twin 7-year-olds and an 11-year-old. So I'll have three daughters in the schools too. I think they're going to be going to Flynn and Hunt. So we're just looking forward to being up here as a family as well. I was really fortunate in the last couple of months to be able to have the opportunity to talk to lots and lots of people in the Burlington schools, staff members, principals, teachers, paraprofessionals. I talked to student groups at BHS, Edmonds, and Hunt, and families, and just lots and lots of people. And what I heard was just this great pride in the schools, in the diversity of the schools, and in the commitment to public education in Burlington, and that really just made me feel great to hear. And I heard a commitment to equity and to making sure that we are dismantling systems of oppression and systems of systemic racism that we know plagues our school system and our nation. And really, what I heard from almost everyone, or probably everyone, is the strengths of the district are the people. We have great people in our schools as across the board. So that was really exciting to hear. And then I also heard from people that there's a desire to make the schools stronger, to make sure that that they stay strong and they get stronger, and that they better serve all of our students. That we do have students who the folks I talk to do not feel like we are serving the best we can. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that. And then also just wanting to make sure that there's trust and communication and collaboration. And so I'm really committed to those things, and hearing from people in Burlington really got me excited about the opportunity and the work. And it also led to the development of a 100-day entry plan. So a lot of times the superintendents come into districts, they develop an entry plan, a 90-day or 100-day entry plan. And what that does is it just defines the work that the person hopes to get done in the first 100 days, the first 3 months. And so I've been building that based on the conversations that I've had, and also based on my personal belief about education and my values for education. And so it's framed around 3 areas. It's framed around equity, engagement, and deep learning. And the equity piece is, I grew up in Washington, D.C., right in the heart of D.C., in a great neighborhood, a place I just loved living, a nice, townhouse. And there was a school right at the edge of, right at the corner of my block. And my mom, for some reason, decided to go to the other side of town, the wealthier side of town, in DC, and wait in line to get me into a school over there. So my mom was an artist. My dad was a contractor. I have a ton of privilege. So she did that. And there's obviously a lot to unpack there. But what it did for me was create a focus on equity in everything that I'm doing, and making sure that every school in a city is an excellent school, and that we are really doing our best as school districts to serve all of our students. And so in that equity bucket, there are priorities in each of those 3 areas. And in the equity priority, we're going to be doing a race and equity workshop series starting on August 6th, that will be facilitated for us and will help us to lead from a place of confidence and of vulnerability in this work. And I feel like it's really important for principals and district leadership to be able to lead there, and then we will continue that out across the district. We're going to review our special education programs. We know we have a lot of work to do in the state around our special education programs. The state was just identified as one of the few states in the country to be in needing assistance for their special education programs. And we know that Burlington also is a part of the state, right? And we need to improve our special education programs. We want to keep going with restorative practices. There's actually a good foundation for restorative practices in the district, and the restorative practices are really hard to get started. And so for me, that foundation, if you look at some of our survey results, I'm seeing 85, 90% of people who are responding saying they feel like they've had good training and they are ready to start to implement this work, but they need more. They need more professional learning. They need more support with it. And then I'm really excited to kick off a book study. So I'm going to do a book study, a social justice minded book study with a group of high school students and propose a couple books. I have a couple favorites out there right now. And then we'll choose a book and do and dig into a book study that gets the conversation going with me and with students, and hopefully builds voice for students. Students have voice, so I don't want to say they don't have voice, but how do I help amplify their voice? And then we also are reorganizing a little bit, and we're creating an equity office where we're not adding any new positions. We just are reorganizing. So Sparks is going to be leading the equity office, and there are a couple of people on our team who will be a part of that office. So that will be one unit that organizes and leads around this work, but it's shared work. The second one is engagement. So it's just really, it's obvious, right? Families, communities, and schools have to work together closely, and I want to really prioritize that collaboration and that work together. And I think it starts with relationships. So for me, I'm spending a lot of time listening and learning and trying to build relationships and just having as many conversations to learn about the district as I can, and also just to build relationships. I don't think we can do the work if we don't have strong relationships. And so a couple of activities there. I'm planning some living room chats. So when I did these in DC Public Schools with the Chancellor, Kaya Henderson at that time, we would go around and I would sit with her on a couch in a living room. We can't do that, but we can do some backyard living room chats. But the idea is to get out into the community, get us out of central office and into the spaces of our community where people feel safe and where we may feel a little vulnerable. And I think that's a really important thing for us to do. I'm going to start a couple of advisory groups. So an advisory group for students, for families, and for teachers to help advise me on things. And then I'm also going to keep going with these conversations. We also have started meeting with the union regularly. One of the things that when I met with Andrew Stiles, the union president, he said, Tom, I just want a regular meeting. And that seemed like an easy one for me. So we're meeting, we're having really positive conversations right now, which is important because we may argue we may disagree at some point, right? So it's important that we understand each other's frame of reference, but I found him to be and Dwight Brown from ASME to be a really, really strong partner. So I'm excited about our work together. And I'm also reassigning a position. So Victor Prusak has been in the district and has done some amazing work throughout his time here, and he's gonna organize our engagement work, our family and community and partner engagement work. And then the last one is deep learning. So I was a teacher. My first year as a teacher, I was a teacher's assistant, and I had the great opportunity of working alongside a master teacher who had retired from Baltimore County Public Schools, and she built a place-based learning curriculum in the Chesapeake Bay where students were out doing field learning experiences and really deeply involved in and engaged and empowered in their own learning, and also challenged. So they were reading complex texts and doing and writing a lot and having deep conversations. And I just think that it's really important. We too often lower the bar for students who have been furthest from opportunity, for students who have been historically marginalized in our systems, and that just further marginalizes people. And we have to make sure that we are supporting all of our students and providing high expectations. We have to believe that our students can meet high expectations. So for that one, I've got to spend time in schools. I have to make sure that I'm in classrooms, I'm working with principals, I'm working with teachers, and I'm in schools and in classrooms. And we're building a professional learning plan that's connected, and where we're continuing work that has been moving well. We're building a curriculum work group to look at our curricular materials, to see where we need more culturally responsive teaching materials, and to make sure our teaching materials are aligned to the Common Core standards. There was a shift to the Common Core standards, and materials haven't all shifted to them. And so it's important that we make sure that we have high quality curricular materials too. And then obviously the reopening plan. So really 95% of my time and of my team's time in the next month or two is going to be about reopening. How do we safely reopen schools? So we have a task force that's working extremely hard on making sure that we are, opening schools safely and also engaging the community in making those decisions about what school opening will look like. So the plan ends on October 9th, and then we're going to kick off into a strategic planning process. We're in the 5th year of a 5-year strategic plan. And so we're going to build off of that and create a new strategic plan going into the next 5 years. And that's really it. I'm honored. I'm excited to be here. And I thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit tonight about what I'm thinking. And I'm open for any questions.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a few minutes for questions. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, if you're interested in talking, just indicate with a hand raise. You'll see the function at the end of the screen. If anyone has trouble finding that, you can just email me. But yeah, raise your hand if you'd like to talk. Carol, I see your hand raised.
Physically. So Tom, I had an opportunity to listen to the NEA meeting or the VEA meeting today. They met with Dr. Levine and Dr. Holmes. And I know the AOE guidelines are pretty overwhelming. And we've asked our staff to read those over and ask questions. It seemed like Dr. Holmes was pointing out that a lot in the plan itself was being left to the local districts to make decisions, which is sort of a mixed bag. There's a balance there of being given that kind of opportunity, but are you getting the resources that you need? Are you getting the support that you need? Are you getting the guideline enforcement that you need? I don't know how familiar you are with all of this at this point, but wondered if you could speak to sort of that local piece that's part of the AOE guidelines. Thank
Sure.
you.
Yeah. I mean, so I have a mentor who's out in California, and he was a superintendent for a long time in Long Beach. And he said to me a couple of days before I got here, Tom, this is the most challenging time I have ever experienced in my life for a superintendent. Good luck. So I think, it's not easy. It's not easy for Secretary French, right? I think we want definitive ultimately, right? Like ultimately you'd want to say, look, you can't have more than you can't have less than 6 foot distance. But I don't think that it's always that I don't think it's always that straightforward. So I think that, Secretary French has been very helpful for me in getting started and meeting with his team and just being extremely welcoming and helpful and supportive. And so I thank him for that. And I think that he's got a really hard situation with a really quickly evolving situation, right? So they want to wait. They want to get guidance out that helps us move forward with our planning, but then also leaves room to give additional guidance as we learn more. And so that's just one of the things that it's just sort of the reality, I think, of where we are. And I think it's really where most states and districts are right now. We did put out a survey, and we got really strong feedback from the survey. A lot of feedback of over 1,200 survey respondents of community of families and over 500 of staff. And so we have some good feedback from staff and community members about where they are. And we have to make a decision soon enough that people can plan for the opening of school. But we also have to make sure that we have all the information we need to make the informed decision. So the big question is 6 feet. How much of the guidance how much of the recommendation for 6 feet is guidance that we really need to follow versus if you can do it, it's good to do. Because we can't do 6 feet. That's not with having everyone in school.
Thank you. I see just one more question from Martha, so I'm going to put her on.
Hello. My name is Martha Lang, and welcome, Mr. Flanagan. I am your neighbor up on Colchester Avenue next to the Burlington School District. Great. I look forward to a long and peaceful relationship. One thing I do want to mention, and I was very actively involved in the pre-K planning for the schools. I know you have a very full agenda, but don't let it fall off the radar. Thank you very much.
Yeah, pre-K is a proven benefit. Early childhood is really important. So we will take that seriously, and I know the board is really serious about that too. So that's something we will not let off our radar. Thank you, Martha.
Great, thank you. I think we're going to move on to the next presentation. Thank you for coming tonight and speaking. And just like with the other presenters, if anyone has any more questions for them, we can definitely connect via email and make sure you have that line of communication.
Yep. And my email is tflanagan@bsdvt.org. So feel free to reach out.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Now Tom Peterson is joining, and they'll be able to speak more about their project. So Tom, you can unmute and then also show video whenever you'd like. You've been promoted to a panelist.
Thank you. Let me get my studio lights on here. A little harsh. Okay. Well, thanks for having us. We're going to give you a very quick update of the Burlington High School renovation project. I think Marty Spalding is sitting in. He's the director of facilities, and so if I need a little extra info or help along the way, Marty's here to help us. I'm going to go ahead and get my presentation up. We'll go through a quick slide deck, and the slide deck will be available as a PDF if people are interested in that. It says host has disabled attendee screen sharing.
Try it now.
Okay, there we go. So some of you have been keeping close track of this project, and a lot of this information has already been presented months ago to Burlington School District, the Building Construction Oversight Committee, and the Burlington Board of Finance. But we'll go through and give you a quick update about where we are. I wanted to touch briefly on the stages of design. We have basically 4 stages, and conceptual design was what was happening before the bond vote, where information was gathered from the public, and the design team put together a concept of the project based on what people's wishes were. Schematic design was happening for most of 2019, and it finally culminated in spring of this year, and we have a design, and we believe that will meet the budget. So now we're into design development. This is where we take the schematic design and add detail to that. With schematic design, it's mostly about the layout of the buildings, how different buildings relate to each other, and in general terms, the spaces within the buildings. With design development, the design team gets more into detail about mechanical systems, electrical systems, wall systems, roof systems, windows, specific classroom and lab requirements, and so forth. So that's a several month process, and we're about almost I'd say 2.5 months into that process now, and design development will continue into, we project it continuing into October of this year. And I wanted to offer this caveat that details are subject to change as we move through the design process. We also have, we've been through 2 rounds of estimating, as many of you know, and the first round came in way over our budget. And so we've had to invest in additional estimating time and services. And we will be doing more periodic estimates, probably at least one more at the end of design development. There may be subsequent estimates after that. And that's where we do another check on the budget to make sure that we're still on track there. So this is the current schematic design, and I want to show, if everybody can see the screen here, and hopefully my cursor is showing up. This is showing the new facility, the changes to the facility without an auxiliary gym, and the bottom image is showing the changes with an auxiliary gym. So the deal with the auxiliary gym is that it's a somewhere between $2 and $4 million of value there, and we're still not sure that the project can afford that. So the way we're going to deal with that is it's being designed. It's going to be put through the permitting process as if we're going to build it. We're going to bid it out and see if the bids come in at an affordable level. If it fits in the budget, it will be built. If it doesn't fit in the budget, it will be deferred to a later date. This is the, looking at it, kind of a bird's eye view, as if you were suspended somewhere up over the student parking lot, about 100 feet in the air, looking down on the school. So the buildings that are generally white are the existing buildings. And the buildings that have some gray, light gray shading is new construction. So starting over here in the southwest corner, there'll be a new stair tower and a new elevator there that will be stretcher compliant. That's the current code for elevators these days. Along the south wall of the gymnasium, underneath the gymnasium is the music department and chorus rooms, band rooms. There's very poor handicap accessibility to those rooms, and we're proposing a new connector here that will be a hallway that will allow people to circulate into those spaces much easier. Here in the middle of the image, we have a new connector that connects A building with B building. You'll notice that all those, we call them hamster tubes, the connectors between the buildings that currently exist, designed in the 50s, built in the 60s, certainly not handicapped accessible. The new connectors are all going to be accessible. And there's fewer of them, and the new ones that we're building are accessible. One of the big changes here is the new entrance. Where my cursor is now is approximately where the front door of the school is. And the proposal is to build this addition that will connect A building with B building. The lower floor of this building is even with what's called level 3 of A building. As this whole facility is built on a hillside, there's no building here that's taller than 4 stories, but we have about a 7-story or 8-story structure because of all the different levels climbing up the hillside. So anyway, the lower level of this B connector, this new addition, is actually even with level 3 of building A. That will contain the administrative offices. It will contain the new library, and I believe some of the student services, not student services, but guidance. Floors 2 and 3 are going to have classrooms, and the art department is probably going to be up here in this upper level of that connector. There's also a new connector between B building and D building, and this is a connector that's two floors tall with what we call a double loaded corridor, meaning there are classrooms on both sides of the corridor. So that will serve the purpose of connecting the buildings, but also utilize that footprint there to have some new construction. Back here is a connector between B building and F building, the lower level of F building. E building will remain for a while. It's going to be when the whole project is completed for the high school. E building will no longer be used for the high school as that's the current plan anyway. That's subject to change, but the idea is to use E building as a flex space for other capital projects in the district. So other schools could send students here for classrooms if certain wings or certain buildings are being renovated. The project highlights are the same as they have always been: accessibility upgrades and consolidation of classrooms and department spaces, creation of maker spaces and new space for new technologies. Of course, the whole project's going to address decades of deferred maintenance, new windows, new roofing, new insulation, much improved energy efficiency, all of which will help contribute to reduced future operating costs. New heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems that will include air conditioning and new lighting, new stormwater management. Excuse me. And of course, enhanced building security. Right now, the building has a lot of openings, a lot of ways into the building. We have to maintain a lot of doors in the building for emergency egress, but the plan is to have one main entry at the front door, with what's called a capture zone, where visitors will be able to enter a vestibule and be identified, sign in before they're allowed into the building. And of course, we'll be upgrading the fire suppression system as well. As far as the floor plan goes, or the site plan, these yellow areas represent the new construction. And here's this box out here is the auxiliary gym as our alternate. The parking lot, at first glance, looks like it's going to be right where it is now, but actually it's shifted to the east, probably about 200 feet to the east, closer to North Avenue. In fact, this entrance here on the left is actually not an entrance. This curb cut is actually the easternmost curb cut of the current parking lot. We'll have circulation through here. There'll be lanes here for visitor parking and for student drop-off. There's a special lane here for specialty buses and for fire equipment. A lot of bicycle parking up here, and there'll be more bicycle parking added here, and more bicycle parking down here. So there's still a lot of details to flesh out for the site plan, but this is a pretty good representation of where we are now. I won't go through all these levels. As I said, this presentation will be available as a PDF if you're interested and want to study it. Want to go over briefly the existing versus proposed. Right now, we're looking at a facility of about 240,000 square feet. The proposed will be in the neighborhood of 270,000 square feet in round numbers. Of that, about 192,000 is renovation and 79,000 is new construction. Number and sizes of classrooms, that was a hot topic of discussion throughout the whole design process. We are going to see a net increase of, I believe we're up to a net increase of about 3 classrooms more than we have now. And we're counting general classrooms as the non-lab spaces. So math, history, social studies, English, special ed, those general classroom sizes. And they're sized for a capacity of approximately 30 square feet per student. Then we have also small group classrooms right now. There are no small breakout rooms. These are classrooms for anywhere from 6 to 15 people, depending on the size of the room. And the facility has nothing like that right now. And we're going to have 4 of those type of rooms spread out throughout the facility. Right now, in the whole 300 or 240,000 square feet, there is 1 conference room for all those people. And we're proposing a total of 6 conference rooms in the new facility. In the completed facility, I should say. It's not going to be a new facility. There's going to be a lot of new construction, but it's going to be a renovated facility. In terms of administrative and support spaces, that would include special education, health services, intensive special needs, so forth. We're going from 14,600 square feet to 21,200 square feet. Extracurricular and lab spaces, so science labs, fine arts, design, technology, so forth, and library is going from 78,000 square feet to 90,000 square feet. BTC spaces, really it's program spaces associated with BTC. They're going to see a net gain of about 90,000 square feet, or 900 square feet. Some of the things we did to save some money and reduce, we had to reduce some scope. We eliminated the canopy over the bike parking, and the bike parking slab is going to be designed to structurally accept the canopy when that can be afforded. That's something that could be added out of capital funds within a few years, I think. The gym floor replacement, we took that out of the project. We think it has more life in it. And again, in the future, when that's ready to be replaced, that would probably be replaced with regular yearly capital funds. We're showing here an elimination of the auxiliary gym, and as I explained earlier, the gym is going to be in the project as an alternate in the bid. So we'll know through the bidding what the gym will cost, and with any luck, we'll be able to build the gym in this round. If not, we'll still have a good design, and it will be that design would be mothballed, and we'll wait till money's available and build it at a later date. We had to drastically reduce renovations to F building to meet the budget. F building, as you know, houses Burlington Technical Center, and we do plan still to do ADA compliance. There's extensive work to do there to meet ADA compliance. We'll maintain new and actually we'll add some restrooms or remodel some restrooms in that building, and we will replace an elevator in that building.
And I'm sorry, Tom, but we're actually coming to the end of your time. So if you want to wrap up your final thoughts, that would be great.
Sure. The rest of this slide deck is really the hard numbers of the estimating process that was happening this winter. No need to go over all those numbers in this presentation, but again, they'll be there for you to study if you so wish. I'm available to answer questions now or at any time. I can be reached. My email address is tom@pcibt.com, and that's all I have for tonight. Unless anybody has some questions.
I don't see any hand raised. So, Carol.
Thank you, Hannah. We just got an email as an NPA, Tom, from someone concerned about the changes over time to the access. If we look at the site plan, that it's easier access for motor vehicles than it is for bikers or walkers, and no accommodation for electric vehicles. So just looking at the site plan and how easy it is for someone coming in from North Avenue to be able to get to the building without having to deal with all the cars.
Well, yeah, we have heard a lot of comments about transportation and multimodal access, and we're taking those to heart. We have conducted one traffic study and then a follow-up traffic study, and we're also meeting with the mobility or multimodal access panel that's going to help us with some of these design issues. I want to say that we have taken into account a lot of those concerns already, and there are electric vehicle plug-ins. There are actually a net loss of parking spaces, which in terms of encouraging multimodal and reducing car traffic is I think is a good thing. The access for bikers is improved over what it is now. So we don't think we've got it 100% nailed in that regard, Carol, but we're making progress there.
Great, thank you, Tom.
And I see that Alexander has their hand raised as well, so that will be our last question.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. A couple of things. I'll try and keep it quick. We talk about energy efficiency. It also looks like the plans have the inclusion of a lot of glass, a lot of windows. And I'm just wondering if there's any initiative in your design community or amongst your designers to kind of maybe mitigate what have traditionally been indulged amongst builders in terms of just like entire walls of glass that have pretty poor energy efficiency. And if you're trying to basically pull back on that at all, or if you are going to indulge these walls of glass, is this kind of going to be like expensive triple pane glass? I'm just interested. I don't want you to get in the weeds. I know that you have an NPA to get along with. Please go ahead.
Well, those are great questions, and those kind of details are what design development is all about. The fenestration, in other words, the sizing and location of windows within all of the facades is still to be determined, and a lot of that design is going to be driven by how we end up having to deal with PCBs that are in the current window systems. So that's all being taken into account, and we know that any window systems we put in are going to be vastly more energy efficient than the existing window systems. And I can't guarantee that they're going to be, actually I can guarantee that there'll probably be more windows than there are now because we'll have more square footage of building. But every window in the place is going to be more efficient than what we have now. And I hear what you're saying about indulging fancy design, and we're definitely digging in our heels about that. We're looking for practicality and efficiency.
My only other point comes on the heels of an earlier discussion of getting armed police officers out of schools. And that's a policy I'm entirely in support of. I really don't think armed cops should be in schools. That's just one person talking. Having said that, this is a highly segmented building, and I think it would probably behoove you to consider basically total site protocols that could be managed from a central point. Basically, since you have this segmented site, is there going to be a way for you to lock down parts of the school, given if the unthinkable and you have an active shooter incident in your school at some point, you want to basically be able to make sure that some places can be locked from within the site, but not actually at where you're locking the door?
Well, that's the general question is about security. The specific question is about how that security is handled. So in general, yes, we are addressing security. We're pursuing CEPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design, and we have a nationally known consultant that has been helping us with that and helping to inform that design in terms of looking at security from all angles, not just lockdowns or electronic systems. So again, design development gets into the details of how those systems, which systems are used and how they'll function. And we're not there yet, but we are certainly addressing security with our consultants.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. I think we're going to move on to the next presentation now.
Thank you, everyone.
Feel free to begin whenever you'd like.
So I am just sharing my screen with you guys. So can everybody see the presentation? Yep, okay, great. So my name is Jenna Olson, and I'm from the Water Resources Division. I just wanted to take a little bit of time tonight to talk to this NPA about our integrated water quality plan. So some of you, Karen, I know, participated in some of the neighborhood forums we had a couple of weeks ago on this integrated water quality plan. The presentation I'm sharing with you tonight is going to be a scaled back version. I just want to do an overview and sort of give a plug to our upcoming engagement opportunities and encourage folks to participate moving forward, to visit our website and check out this process. So, whoops. Okay. So the city's Water Resources Division is made up of 3 distinct sections. We're drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. Each section is responsible for a significant amount of infrastructure to manage and steward, and a variety of regulatory obligations, I think, as most folks know. So while each division has a lot on its plate, we do function as one unified water utility, and that's really important to keep in mind when you're thinking about, you know, how we're planning to meet the variety of challenges that Burlington faces for water quality. So probably the biggest or the most frequent feedback that we hear from the public is about our combined sewer system. Combined sewers were originally designed many generations ago and are really common in dense urban areas like Burlington, especially those that were built starting back in the 1800s. So while they really do help with drainage under normal circumstances, the problems that we see with overflows actually arise during really heavy rainfalls. You know, the storm that we had back on May 29th, the storm that we had a couple of weeks ago, when you get a ton of rainfall and there isn't really anywhere for it to go, things start to overflow. We have a lot more impervious surface than we did back when these systems were designed. And it's just, there's more getting into the sewer now. So the vast majority of Burlington sewers are actually disconnected at this point, but roughly 35% of our system is still combined. Unfortunately, that area that is still combined is really concentrated in the old North End and the downtown core, and those are the most heavily impervious areas of the city. They also have really dense underground utilities, and there just really isn't any space underground to separate the sewers. The other thing is that simple separation doesn't actually treat stormwater, and we know that stormwater carries a variety of pollutants on its own, and that it generates a lot of water quality challenges in and of itself. So because of how much infrastructure we manage and because of all of the different things that Water Resources is always doing, you know, I'm sure that folks have seen us out responding to sewer plugs and water breaks and, you know, all kinds of crazy stuff. It's kind of hard to keep track of all the stuff that we're doing at any given time. It's important to clarify what items fall into the purview of integrated planning. So the stuff that we're talking about tonight really is specific to wastewater and stormwater. And the main reason for that is that there are different laws that govern wastewater and stormwater, the Clean Water Act versus drinking water, which is the Safe Drinking Water Act. That doesn't mean that we're not focused on our drinking water resources. We do continue to invest a significant amount of funding into our drinking water rehab programs every year. And a lot of that work is underway as we speak. The more relevant set of projects to today's presentation are really the items that fall under the Clean Water Resiliency Plan. So as a reminder, that work was part of the $30 million bond that voters weighed in on in 2018. That aimed really to address acute challenges with our wastewater and stormwater infrastructure that really came to light during that summer. And that effort is also underway as we speak, and information about the work that's currently underway is available on the website. So that brings us back to what the heck is integrated planning? What are you guys talking about? Is this a new thing? We started this journey in 2014 with a substantial grant from the EPA. We were one of only 8 communities selected throughout the United States to undertake this initial planning effort. We knew when we got started here that it was going to be a huge undertaking. And sure enough, 6 years later, here we are, with the finish line hopefully in sight at this point. So the point of integrated planning is that it ends up being the umbrella under which all of our clean water efforts live. The final plan considers cost effectiveness, overall community benefit of different strategies to meet water quality goals, and I'll get into that in a minute. But the essential point is that we have this phosphorus challenge, and it's really easy to hone in on the wastewater treatment facilities because, anybody who's ever walked down Riverside or has walked along the bike path at the waterfront has certainly smelled our clarifiers. It gets a lot of attention in the media, so it's really easy to hone in on that. But it's important to understand that when we're referring to phosphorus, we're talking about various sources. It's not just wastewater. It's not even just stormwater. But the main point is that right now, as a regulatory goal, the city has to reduce phosphorus from all of the sources that it's responsible for. So for us, that's developed land and the wastewater treatment plants by 63%, no later than 2036. So that's going to be a big undertaking, and we needed to get creative because we saw this coming. So there are a lot of options to meet the phosphorus reduction requirements. The idea here with the integrated plan is that we're going to identify a combination of projects to meet those reduction goals by assembling a project portfolio. Each portfolio has different impacts, costs, benefits, potential drawbacks, and a lot of the potential projects involve neighborhood construction, impacts on parking, changes how leaves and lawns are managed. And that's one of the reasons why we're coming to the community and asking for folks to weigh in. So we just completed a number of community forums. We will be, assembling that feedback that we received during those forums over the next several weeks. We're presenting to DPW Commission and the TUC later this month, DPW Commission next week and TUC on July 28th. And then at the end of August, we'll be having another series of community meetings where the community will be able to weigh in on specific portfolio options. And in the end, what we're going to come out with is a complete set of project portfolios that take into account what Burlingtonians want. So like I said, I'm not going to get into a huge amount of detail here. But again, when we're building the portfolios, we're looking at, what combination of projects and investments is going to, have the lowest total costs, involve less greenhouse gas emissions, benefit underserved areas, require less maintenance, create the least amount of disruption. That's a big thing with parking, especially in the Old North End. We're really looking to not take away that really limited resource still. So we're building this project portfolio, and there are specific areas that we're pulling from. So we have the wastewater treatment plants. The options there involve, further optimizing our phosphorus removal processes, adding tertiary or dual use processes. It's important to remember that main plant right now actually has a 93% phosphorus removal rate, which is really high. And so further optimizing that, getting that last 7% could be really expensive. And that's something that we have to keep in mind as we start assembling these portfolios. Combined sewer system improvements, sewer separation, distributed storage, things like that. And as we talked about earlier, some of the challenges associated with sewer separation are, real estate, and also that it doesn't provide treatment. Again, stormwater itself is polluted and it's dirty, and we don't want that getting into the lake either. And so just separating the sewers isn't the silver bullet that some folks think it is. Stormwater management would involve installing more distributed green stormwater infrastructure systems. We currently actually have 17 subsurface infiltration systems throughout the city, the majority of which are already in the Old North End. We have a significant grant from the state. It was $1 million. We were awarded that at the end of 2018, early 2019. Technically, we applied for it at the end of 2018. And that will involve construction of at least 5 or 6 more stormwater infrastructure systems in the Old North End area. The reason for that being, and I'll get into this in a minute, is that the site conditions in the Old North End are really great. The Old North End has super deep beach sand. It's just, I know people who live there are probably like, I can't get anything to grow in my garden, but it's just amazing for infiltration. It's a stormwater person's dream. Then we have our non-structural programs. That's stuff like enhancing our street sweeping practices, expanding leaf management options, so like leaf pickup programs, things like that. And then we have private property. So those types of projects are going to involve, offering rebates or grants to homeowners to install this stuff, and then updating and enhancing, enhancing ordinances, and also enhancing implementation of existing ordinances. Karen and I have had many conversations about this, and we need to do better about how we implement our existing ordinances, I think probably before we come up with anything new. So that's definitely on the radar. So, site and system conditions are going to affect individual project feasibility. Neighborhood infrastructure versus combined sewer controls. Again, not every neighborhood is well suited for green infrastructure. We have to worry about things like depth to groundwater, types of soil. Is their ledge really shallow? Utility conflicts, things like that. Are we going to be removing a lot of parking in a place where there isn't much parking to begin with? And then timing really varies with project type too. So when we're talking about that overall implementation schedule, the goal here is to front load the process so we're not getting to 2036 before we see improvements in the lake. The idea here is that we're front loading the process with the most efficient practices and the most efficient systems up front to try to see those marked improvements as early as possible. But there are resources needed for a lot of these things. So when we're thinking about timing, you know, street sweeping can be really challenging because we need another street sweeper, and then we need somebody to drive that street sweeper, and we need somewhere to put all the debris, and we have to test that debris. And so there are a lot of moving parts to these things. So, like I said, the community feedback is necessary, and we're going to be looking for that, and we'll definitely be looking to the NPAs to help us promote that and get the word out about those events later in August. So, you know, again, the community feedback is going to be about things on our overall investment approach, you know, rebate and incentive programs on private property, city operations, stuff like that, and the scoring criteria. So that community input is going to be reflected in the scoring criteria that we use to assemble a project portfolio. You know, the criteria are things like water quantity and quality benefits, regulatory compliance, community benefit, cost, sustainability, operational impact. You know, these are, you know, there are a variety of things that we need to consider when we're scoring a project before we assemble one of these portfolios. So I'm flying right now, but I just want to make sure that I'm getting this in and then giving folks time to ask a couple of questions, because I know that we're down to the wire. So throughout July, we'll be, you know, summarizing and assembling the public input that we've received thus far, doing those presentations to DPW, Commission, and Chuk, and doing outreach to whatever NPAs we can get to. August, we will be holding those public meetings to weigh in on those specific portfolio options. In September, we're hoping to do presentations and hearings on a preferred portfolio, assembled portfolio. And then October, November, we'll be finalizing the integrated plan with DEC at the state. And December will involve completing the integrated plan and partying because it's finally done after so long. So again, I flew through that and I recognize that, you know, it was a lot. I sincerely appreciate getting on any of the NPA agendas for July. I know that it's hard to get on the agendas in the summertime because a lot of the NPAs don't meet. So Wards 1 and 8 showed up for me this month and I appreciate it. So if there are questions, I'm happy to answer. I know it's getting late. My 1-year-old is asleep in the next room, so hopefully I didn't wake her up.
So if anyone has any questions, you can just raise your hand with the function on the bottom of the screen, and we'll let you in to speak. Karen, are you raising your hand? Yeah? Oh, you're still muted.
Still.
I thought it was muted anyway. Thank you. It's really great to hear this progress. And yeah, we've had a lot of conversations, and I guess my biggest thing is that enforcing zoning and bringing back that green space so we have more permeable soil. Even today, I imagine there was like overflow because we had a lot of really fast rain coming down my street. I'm wondering where we have these big planter things, this is just a suggestion. Could that area, it's already lost parking, could that be like a spot for one of your dipped rain garden type things to catch some of the water? I know Union and Willard really flood badly. When we have a lot of rain, I mean, there could be 12 inches of water on Union, or there has been before. And people's basements flood. I've heard of sewage coming up. I mean, it's pretty gross.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, that's just, you know, that's one little area that we have a lot of those, and that would still squeeze the streets and, you know, make cars slow down, which was the point of those quick build planters, but it would then collect water in a rain garden type situation.
Yeah, so those were meant as pilots, actually. So in areas where traffic calming wasn't positive that we'd be able to sustain long-term parking removal or that it would work for traffic calming, they put those in. So in areas where they've put those quick builds in and have identified that they can keep them, we will be putting in rain gardens in those areas. So some of those will turn into rain gardens. I don't know about that one specifically. I haven't talked to Nicole or Elizabeth about it recently, but a lot of those are up for potential making them permanent. So it's a good suggestion.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
So this is going to be the last call for questions. So if anyone has anything they'd like to say, please raise your hand. If not, I think we can wrap up the meeting. So thank you all for coming. Not seeing any more hands raised.
I don't either.
So I think we're
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Jenna.
Thank you, Jenna.
Okay,
Thank you.
no hands.
Thank you.
Did I see?
Thanks, Jenna and everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, Hannah.